The Jem'Hadar fleet burned. Princess Karos watched from the bridge of her crippled battleship as the merciless Dominion ships unleashed a storm of plasma fire on her homeworld below. The once mighty warships of the Jem'Hadar Imperial Navy, masters of 1,000 systems, now drifted as shattered hulks amid clouds of debris. It was over. The war was lost. Karos slammed an armored fist onto the arm of her command chair, scales rippling in rage and despair. Her ships were gone, her armies smashed. Her people, once the undisputed power of the galactic south, were broken. Planets blazing, cities crumbling, billions dead or enslaved under the ruthless hand of the Dominion. And it was her fault. She had failed them. The Dominion fleet moved into low orbit, plasma cannons charging for a final genocidal bombardment that would render the Jem'Hadar extinct. Karos had minutes left to live, minutes to watch her species burn under the guns of the hated enemy. Then a new contact appeared on the scanner, a massive ship, angular and silver, bristling with advanced weapons. Karos felt a surge of shock and desperate hope as she recognized its configuration. It was not Dominion. The newcomer was human. The human ship dove towards the Dominion fleet, impossibly fast. Its hull shimmered as alien energies played across advanced defensive shields. The Dominion ships turned ponderously to face this new threat, their commander confused. Why would the humans intervene? This was not their war. Humanity and the Jem'Hadar were not allies. But Karos understood. The humans were not here to save the Jem'Hadar. They were here because they knew if the Dominion was not stopped now, at Jaxar Prime, humanity would be their next target. This was humanity's chance to check Dominion expansion, to bloody their foe before the inevitable war reached human space. And the Jem'Hadar, in their darkest hour, would become the unwitting tool of human foreign policy. The human ship opened fire. Lances of impossibly bright blue-white energy leapt from its weapons arrays, instantly spearing Dominion ships, burning through shields and armor like paper. The Dominion returned fire, but the human ship danced amid the plasma bolts, impossibly agile for its size. Its hull shimmered and warped as its inertial dampers absorbed the force of high-G maneuvers that would have pulped a merely organic crew. Then the hail came. The human captain, a rugged, dark-skinned man in a black warship's uniform, appeared on Karos's screen. She saw the name on his suit, Captain Samuel Bennett, UES Retribution. The Retribution's firing weakened as the Dominion fleet regrouped, shields battered but still intact. Captain Bennett slammed a fist on his command console. "Damn it, they adapt fast. Our weapons are losing effectiveness." He turned to his comm officer. "Get me a channel to that Jem'Hadar flagship, now." The screen flickered and dived into the face of Princess Karos, regal even in defeat. "You have my thanks, Captain, for your timely intervention. But even your mighty ship cannot stand alone against the full force of the Dominion Armada." Bennett leaned forward. "Agreed, but together we may have a chance. Permission to bring a shuttle over to discuss strategy?" Karos nodded curtly. "Granted. But be warned, Captain, my people will not be your puppets. We fight for our own survival, not your human agendas." Bennett smiled tightly. "As do we, Princess, as do we." "Close." The Retribution shuttle touched down in the hangar bay of Karos's battered flagship. Bennett strode down the ramp, flanked by Major Hawkins and a pair of armed Marines. Jem'Hadar guards snapped to attention, eyeing the humans warily. Karos awaited them, still clad in her battle-scarred armor. At her side stood a towering reptilian warrior with a livid plasma scar across his crest. "General Tarsak," Karos said, "my most able commander." Tarsak inclined his head fractionally, yellow eyes cold. "The Dominion will not give us much time. If we are to plan, let us do so quickly." In the flagship's war room, holo displays showed the tattered remnants of the Jem'Hadar fleet and the looming mass of Dominion ships in orbit. Bennett traced a finger over the largest enemy cluster. "There, the Dominion command ship. If we can take it out, we'll throw their fleet into disarray." Karos hissed softly. "You do not understand the Dominion's chain of command. They will simply transfer control to the next ship in line. We must strike at the heart of their forces." She manipulated the display, highlighting a smaller, sleeker vessel. The cloning facility. It is the key to their endless waves of reinforcements. Destroy it, and we cripple their ability to replenish their numbers. Bennett rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. A dual strike, then, a combined force to hit the command ship and draw their fire, while a second team infiltrates and sabotages the cloning facility. Tarsok growled, "Your human troops are not equipped for such a mission. They will be slaughtered." Karos silenced him with a look, then turned to Bennett. "What exactly do you propose, Captain?" Bennett called up a schematic on the display. It showed a Jem'Hadar warrior, but implants and circuitry glowed beneath its scaled skin. "Your biotechnology, Princess. Regenerative subdermal armor, synaptic combat stims, nano-assisted healing. Integrated into our Marines' battlesuits, it could give us the edge we need." Karos's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You ask us to share the secrets of our greatest military advantage? The tools that make us strong?" Bennett met her gaze steadily. "I'm asking you to give us a fighting chance to save both our peoples. We're in this together now, whether we like it or not." For a long, tense moment, Karos was silent. Then slowly she nodded. "Very well, but this biotechnology is complex, and your human physiology is different. The integration will require time, and the utmost mutual trust and cooperation between our forces." She fixed Bennett with a hard stare. "Choose your warriors carefully, Captain. They will carry the fate of the Jem'Hadar within their veins." The integration of Jem'Hadar biotechnology into human physiology proved more challenging than anticipated. Days stretched into weeks as the Allied scientists worked tirelessly, their efforts punctuated by frequent setbacks and moments of breakthrough. Captain Bennett paced the length of the makeshift lab aboard the Retribution, his boots echoing on the metal deck plates. "How much longer?" he asked, not for the first time. Dr. Erica Chen, lead human biotechnologist, looked up from her microscope. "We're close, Captain. The latest batch of nanites is showing promising results in simulated human tissue." Across the room, Jem'Hadar scientist Kral Thok manipulated a holographic display of human DNA. "The genetic compatibility issues are nearly perseveranced, but we must exercise caution. A single miscalculation could prove catastrophic." Bennett nodded grimly. He knew the risks, but time was not on their side. The Dominion fleet had withdrawn to regroup, but it was only a matter of time before they returned in force. A chime from the lab's communication panel interrupted his thoughts. "Captain Bennett to the bridge," came the voice of his XO. "We're receiving an urgent transmission from Jem'Hadar High Command." On the bridge, Princess Karos's face filled the main view screen. Her scales were dull with fatigue, but her eyes burned with intensity. "Captain, we've received intelligence on a critical Dominion supply hub on Kalex Prime. If we can strike now, we may cripple their war effort in this sector." Bennett leaned forward. "What's the catch, Princess?" Karos's mandibles clicked in what Bennett had come to recognize as a Jem'Hadar expression of frustration. "The intelligence is time-sensitive. We must move within the next solar day, or lose our window of opportunity." Bennett's heart made. The enhanced soldiers weren't ready, but they couldn't afford to pass up this chance. He made his decision. "We'll do it, but we'll need to rely on conventional forces for now." He turned to his tactical officer. "Assemble the strike team. We're going in hot." The next hours were a blur of preparation. Human Marines and Jem'Hadar warriors drilled side by side, their movements still awkward and uncoordinated. Major Jack Hawkins, Bennett's most experienced ground commander, watched the exercises with a scowl. "This is a disaster waiting to happen," he muttered to Bennett. "These lizards don't know the first thing about human tactics." Nearby, General Tarsok overheard. The massive Jem'Hadar's crest flared in anger. "Your tactics are primitive and predictable," he snarled. "It is you humans who will get us all killed." Bennett stepped between them before the argument could escalate. "Enough! We don't have time for this. You two need to figure out how to work together, or this mission is doomed before it starts." He fixed them both with a hard stare. "Hawkins, you'll lead the main assault force. Tarsok, you and your best stealth operatives will infiltrate and sabotage the base's defenses. I expect you both to coordinate flawlessly. Is that clear?" Both warriors nodded stiffly, their mutual distaste evident. Hours later, the strike force deployed to the surface of Kalex Prime. The planet's twin suns beat down on a landscape of rust-colored rock and twisted metal, the remnants of an ancient civilization long since scoured away by Dominion strip mining. Hawkins led his team towards the sprawling Dominion base, a fortress of gleaming alloys and crackling energy fields. "Strike Team Alpha in position," he reported over the comm. "Awaiting your signal, Tarsak." Inside the base's perimeter, Tarsak and his Jem'Hadar commandos moved like shadows through maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts. They reached a central control node, and Tarsak's skilled fingers danced over alien circuitry. "Defense is compromised," he growled into his comm. "Begin your assault." Hawkins grinned fiercely. "You heard the lizard. Light him up." Human and Jem'Hadar alike surged forward, their weapons blazing. Dominion soldiers fell before the onslaught, caught off guard by the sudden failure of their defensive systems. For a moment, it seemed the audacious plan might succeed. Then reality came crashing down. The ground trembled. Massive doors slid open in the base's courtyard, disgorging wave after wave of Dominion troops. Hawkins watched in horror as hundreds, then thousands of enemy soldiers poured from hidden bunkers. "It's a trap!" he shouted into his comm. "Fall back! Fall back!" But it was too late. The Allied forces found themselves surrounded, caught in a closing net of Dominion firepower. Aboard the Retribution, Bennett and Karos watched the unfolding disaster with mounting dread. "We have to do something," Karos hissed, her tail lashing in agitation. Bennett's fingers flew over his console, composing an urgent request for reinforcements to Earth Command. The response came swiftly, and his heart sank. "Request denied. Maintain current position. Do not escalate conflict." He looked at Karos, saw the desperation in her eyes. He thought of Hawkins, Tarsak, and all the brave soldiers fighting and dying on the planet below. Bennett made his choice. "Dr. Chen," he said into the ship's comm, "prep the enhanced soldiers for immediate deployment. All of them." "But sir," Chen's voice crackled back, "the integration process isn't complete. We haven't run final tests." "There's no time," Bennett cut her off. "It's now or never." He turned to Karos, his face grim. "I hope your biotech works as advertised, Princess, because I just bet all our lives on it." Karos met his gaze, an unspoken understanding passing between them. "As have I, Captain. As have I." The enhanced soldiers descended on Kalex Prime like avenging angels, their modified bodies blurring with impossible speed. Sarah Miller, among the first to receive the full integration of Jem'Hadar biotechnology, felt her heart racing as she sprinted across the battlefield. Her enhanced senses picked up every detail: the acrid smell of plasma discharge, the thunderous impacts of energy weapons, the cries of the wounded. She vaulted over a crumbling barricade, her augmented muscles propelling her impossibly high. Time seemed to slow as she hung in the air, targeting systems flickering in her enhanced vision. Sarah unleashed a barrage of precision fire, each shot finding its mark with inhuman accuracy. Beside her, Korath moved with fluid grace, his scaled skin now interwoven with gleaming circuitry. The Jem'Hadar warrior's claws sliced through Dominion armor like paper, his regenerative abilities sealing wounds almost as quickly as they were inflicted. The tide of battle turned swiftly. Where moments before the Allied forces had been on the verge of annihilation, now they pushed forward with unstoppable momentum. Hawkins and Tarsak, their earlier animosity forgotten in the heat of combat, coordinated their efforts with brutal efficiency. But their hard-fought victory was short-lived. Aboard the Retribution, Captain Bennett's triumphant grin faded as a priority transmission cut through the jubilant chatter of the bridge crew. Admiral Graves' face appeared on the main view screen, his expression thunderous. "Captain Bennett, you are hereby ordered to return the Retribution to Earth immediately. You will face a military tribunal for your blatant disregard of direct orders." Bennett's mind focused. "With all due respect, Admiral, we're in the middle of a critical operation. Withdrawing now would—" "This is not a debate, Captain," Graves cut him off. "You've overstepped your authority for the last time." Princess Karos, who had been silently observing the exchange, stepped forward. Admiral Graves, if I may interject, our combined forces are on the verge of a breakthrough against the Dominion. To abandon this campaign now would be catastrophic for both our peoples. Graves hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he considered the Jem'Hadar leader. And what exactly do you propose, Princess? What followed were hours of tense negotiation. Bennett paced the length of his ready room, his uniform collar feeling tighter with each passing moment. Finally, a compromise was reached. The Retribution and its crew will remain deployed, Graves announced, his tone making it clear this was not a victory for Bennett. However, you will now be under the joint command of Commodore Logan Briggs. As if on cue, a stern-faced officer stepped into view beside the Admiral. Commodore Briggs radiated an aura of rigid authority, his eyes cold as he regarded Bennett. I look forward to bringing some order to this operation, Captain, Briggs said, his voice clipped and precise. Expect my arrival within 48 hours. The transmission cut out, leaving Bennett and Karos in stunned silence. The captain ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. Well, Princess, it seems our alliance just got a lot more complicated. Karos's scaled brow furrowed. This Commodore Briggs, will he jeopardize our efforts? He's by the book to a fault, Bennett admitted, but he's also one hell of a tactician. If we can get him to see the bigger picture, he could be a valuable asset. The princess nodded, her tail twitching thoughtfully. Then we must ensure he understands the stakes. Come, Captain, we have much work to do before your new colleague arrives. As Bennett followed Karos from the ready room, his mind raced with the implications of this new development. The alliance hung by a thread, and the next moves would determine not just the fate of their mission, but the future of human Jem'Hadar relations. The real test, it seemed, was just beginning. The arrival of Commodore Briggs brought a palpable tension to the Retribution. His presence loomed over every decision, every strategy meeting. Yet as the days passed, even Briggs couldn't deny the effectiveness of the human Jem'Hadar alliance. It was during one such strategy session that Tarsok, newly recovered from his injuries, burst into the war room. His scales glistened with perspiration, eyes wide with urgency. Captain Bennett, Princess Karos, he rumbled. I've uncovered critical intelligence. There's a vulnerability in the Dominion capital's defenses, a backdoor we can exploit. The room erupted into a flurry of activity. Bennett and Karos exchanged a look of iron will. This was the opening they'd been waiting for. We'll need a strike team, Bennett said, his mind already assembling the pieces. Our best and brightest. Karos nodded. A small force, elite. We cannot risk detection. Within hours, the team was assembled. Bennett surveyed the group, a mix of humanity's finest special forces and Jem'Hadar commandos. At their core stood Jack, Sarah, and Korath, living proof of what their alliance could achieve. The Retribution slipped into the Zaret system with predatory grace, concealing itself in the shadow of a massive gas giant. From its belly, stealth shuttles emerged, carrying their precious cargo towards Gore-Veldran, the Dominion capital. Sarah's enhanced senses prickled as their shuttle entered the planet's atmosphere. Something felt wrong. A moment later, alarms blared. "Incoming fire!" the pilot shouted. Plasma bolts streaked past the viewport. Two shuttles erupted into fireballs, their occupants' screams cut horribly short. "How did they know?" Jack snarled, gripping his weapon. Their shuttle bucked and shuddered under the assault. The surface of Gore-Veldran rushed up to meet them, a landscape of twisted metal and harsh angles. With a bone-jarring impact, they crashed. Smoke filled the cabin. Sarah kicked out the emergency hatch, her augmented strength easily overcoming the warped metal. "Move!" she barked. The survivors regrouped on the planet's surface. Their numbers were diminished, but their determination remained unshaken. Bennett assessed the situation, his mind racing through contingencies. "We stick to the plan," he said. "2 teams. I'll lead the infiltration. Karos, you handle the diversion." As Karos assembled her group, she pulled Bennett aside. "There's something you should know," she said, her voice low. "I carry within me the future of my people, my mate's genetic legacy." Bennett's eyes widened at the implications. Are you sure you should? Karos cut him off with a gesture. This changes nothing. We fight not just for today, but for tomorrow. The teams separated, each with their own vital mission. Bennett led his group towards the imposing silhouette of the Royal Citadel. Jack's fingers danced over holographic interfaces, human ingenuity melding seamlessly with Jem'Hadar tech to bypass security grids. Korath moved with fluid grace, his enhanced synapses processing the Citadel's layout faster than any organic mind could comprehend. "This way," he hissed, guiding them through a maze of corridors. They were so close to their goal when everything went wrong. A force field sprang to life, cutting Korath off from the rest of the team. Dominion troops materialized from hidden alcoves, weapons trained on the intruders. At their center stood a tall, lean figure with eyes like shards of ice. "Welcome," said Krell, his voice dripping with malevolent glee. "I've been expecting you." In a blur of motion, Sarah launched herself at the Dominion interrogator. But Krell was ready. A device on his wrist pulsed, and Sarah collapsed, writhing in agony. "Fascinating," Krell mused. "Your regenerative abilities are truly remarkable. I look forward to exploring their limits." Bennett, Jack, and Sarah were roughly restrained and dragged away. The last thing Bennett saw before a hood was pulled over his head was Korath, motionless on the floor, a pool of luminescent blood spreading beneath him. In the depths of the Citadel, inside a chamber of cold metal and harsher purpose, Krell began his work. Pain became a constant companion as he probed their minds and bodies with cruel precision. "Your alliance is doomed," Krell whispered in Bennett's ear. "Even now, a Dominion armada approaches the Jem'Hadar homeworld. Soon there will be nothing left but ashes." On the Retribution, Tarsok and Sarai worked feverishly to decipher an encrypted changeling frequency. If their suspicions were correct, it could lead them to an unexpected ally within the Dominion itself. But time was running out. The ship's long-range sensors detected the approaching Dominion fleet, an unstoppable tide of destruction bearing down on the Jem'Hadar homeworld. In the ship's war room, Commodore Briggs faced off against Logan, their voices rising in heated debate. "We can't let those weapons fall into Dominion hands," Briggs argued. "If we act now, we can deny them their prize." Logan's face contorted with rage. "You're talking about genocide. We came here to save the Jem'Hadar, not obliterate them ourselves." As the argument raged on, the fate of two species hung in the balance. On Gore Veldrin, Bennett clung to consciousness, his thoughts turning to Sarah, Jack, and the others. He could only hope that somewhere in the vast Citadel, Korath still lived, still fought. And deep within the Dominion stronghold, a single encoded transmission pulsed outward, carrying with it the faintest glimmer of hope. The encrypted changeling frequency crackled to life, its message causing Tarsok and Sarai to exchange looks of horror. "We need to alert Admiral Graves immediately," Tarsok growled, his claws flying over the console. On the bridge, tension thickened the air as Admiral Graves faced off against Commodore Briggs. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he processed the urgent transmission from Tarsok. "Security teams to the bridge, now!" Graves barked into his comm. Briggs' face contorted, his human facade melting away, to reveal the shimmering, gelatinous form beneath. "You're too late," he snarled, lashing out with a liquefied arm that sent Graves sprawling. Chaos erupted as loyal crew members clashed with Dominion infiltrators. Phaser fire sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on consoles and bulkheads. The metallic tang of blood filled the air as the two sides engaged in vicious hand-to-hand combat. Briggs moved with inhuman speed, evading attacks and striking with deadly precision. He reached the weapons control station, his fingers a blur as he input the override sequence. "Plasma cannons charging," the ship's computer announced. "Target locked, Jem'Hadar homeworld." Graves struggled to his feet, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. "All hands, abandon ship," he shouted. "Get to the escape pods." Loyalist crew members fought their way to the escape pods, sealing themselves inside as the Retribution shuddered under the strain of its charging weapons. The pods ejected, streaking away from the doomed vessel, just as a blinding beam of energy erupted from its cannons. On the planet's surface, Samuel's strike team felt the ground shake as the blast hit. A wave of electromagnetic energy washed over them, frying every electronic device in its path. Darkness fell as the city's power grid failed, plunging friend and foe alike into chaos. In the depths of the Dominion interrogation facility, Korath's enhanced senses pierced the gloom. His wounds still oozed phosphorescent blood, but the Jem'Hadar warrior pushed through the pain. He moved silently through the corridors, following the scent of his human allies. The sound of screams led him to a chamber where Samuel, Jack, and Sarah hung suspended in energy fields. Krell loomed over them, a sadistic grin on his face as he adjusted the controls on a neural disruptor. Korath burst through the door, his augmented strength tearing it from its hinges. Krell whirled, but he was too slow. The Jem'Hadar's claws raked across the interrogator's chest, sending him stumbling back. "Get them out!" Korath roared, engaging Krell in a brutal melee. Jack's fingers danced over the control panel, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the alien technology. The energy fields flickered and died, releasing the prisoners. Sarah landed in a crouch, her enhanced muscles coiling like springs. She sprang at the nearest guard, her fist connecting with a sickening crunch. The guard's helmet caved in, and he dropped like a stone. Samuel grabbed a fallen weapon, its unfamiliar weight balanced by his augmented reflexes. He fired, catching another guard in the chest with a burst of plasma. Krell snarled, breaking free from his grapple with Korath. He slammed his hand on a wall panel, and klaxons blared throughout the facility. "You won't escape," he hissed, backing towards an exit. "I'll hunt you to the ends of the galaxy if I have to." The team fought their way through waves of Dominion troops, their enhanced abilities giving them a crucial edge in the darkness. They emerged into a hellscape of destruction. The once proud Jem'Hadar capital lay in ruins, its towering spires reduced to smoldering rubble. In the distance, explosions lit up the sky. The distinctive silhouettes of Jem'Hadar warships descended through the atmosphere, disgorging waves of elite commandos. Among them, human figures in gleaming augmented armor stood out, the loyal crew of the Retribution, joining forces with their alien allies. Samuel's comm crackled to life, Tarsok's voice barely audible through the static. "Samuel, do you read? We're pushing towards the throne room. Emperor Drax is making his last stand there. We need you to—" The transmission cut out, but the message was clear. Samuel turned to his team, their faces illuminated by the fires raging around them. Without a word, they nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. As one, they moved towards the heart of the ruined city, where the fate of two species would be decided in the crucible of battle. The ruins of Gore Veldron erupted into a maelstrom of plasma fire and thunderous explosions. Samuel's team advanced through the shattered streets, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to navigate the treacherous terrain with inhuman grace. Jack ducked behind a crumbling wall as enemy fire peppered their position. "We've got a nest of snipers in that tower," he shouted, gesturing towards a half-collapsed spire looming over the cityscape. Sarah's eyes flashed with cold calculation. In a blur of motion, she sprinted across the open ground, plasma bolts sizzling past her augmented form. She leapt, her enhanced muscles propelling her impossibly high. With a crash of breaking glass, she disappeared into the sniper's perch. Moments later, bodies plummeted from the tower's heights. Sarah emerged on a high balcony, giving a thumbs up to her comrades below. Korath growled in approval. "Impressive," he rumbled. "Now, we press on." The team fought block by block, their hybrid abilities proving decisive against waves of entrenched Dominion troops. Samuel's augmented senses picked up the slightest movements, allowing him to anticipate ambushes before they could be sprung. In the distance, the Citadel's imposing silhouette dominated the skyline. Explosions bloomed along its outer walls as Princess Karos led her assault. The distinctive forms of Jem'Hadar warships hung in the sky, exchanging fire with the Dominion fleet above. A deafening roar filled the air as orbital strikes rained down on Karos's position. Samuel watched in horror as the barrage engulfed her forces. "We need to reach them," he said, his voice tight with urgency. They redoubled their efforts, pushing through kill zones and fortified choke points. Jack's cybernetic implants allowed him to hack enemy defenses, turning automated turrets against their former masters. As they neared the Citadel's outer perimeter, a chilling laugh cut through the din of battle. Krell materialized from the shadows, his eyes gleaming with malevolent hunger. "I've been waiting for this," the interrogator hissed. He raised a hand and Sarah collapsed, screaming in agony as her neural implants misfired. Samuel raised his weapon, but Krell was faster. A wave of psychic energy slammed into him, sending him reeling. Jack and Korath moved to flank, but Krell's abilities kept them at bay. Sarah writhed on the ground, her body convulsing as Krell's attack ravaged her mind. Through the haze of pain, she felt something building within her, a wellspring of raw power. With a primal scream, she released it all. A blinding flash erupted from Sarah's prone form. When Samuel's vision cleared, Krell was gone, vaporized by the force of Sarah's bioblast. Sarah lay motionless, steam rising from her augmented body. There was no time to mourn. The team pushed on, linking up with Karos's battered forces at the Citadel gates. The princess's face was streaked with blood and grime, but her eyes burned with perseverance. "We end this now," she growled. Together they launched a final, desperate assault. Jack took point, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to weave through enemy fire. A plasma bolt caught him in the chest and he stumbled. Samuel caught him as he fell. "Go!" Jack gasped, pressing a data chip into Samuel's hand. "Finish it." The throne room doors loomed before them. With a roar of defiance, Samuel and Karos burst through, flanked by their remaining warriors. Emperor Drax rose from his ornate throne, his changeling guards forming a protective ring around him. "So," Drax sneered, "the Mongrel Alliance comes to beg for mercy." He raised an ancient scepter, crackling with eldritch energies. A wave of force slammed into the intruders, scattering them like leaves in a hurricane. Samuel felt his augmentations straining against the onslaught. Korath charged, drawing Drax's attention. The Gemhotter warrior's claws raked across the Emperor's face before a blast from the scepter sent him flying. Sarah, barely conscious, dragged herself forward. She locked eyes with Samuel, a silent understanding passing between them. With the last of her strength, she lunged at Drax, grappling for the scepter. Samuel saw his opening. He sprinted forward, his enhanced muscles propelling him faster than any normal human could move. His hand closed around the scepter, wrenching it from Drax's grasp. Time seemed to slow as Samuel brought the ancient weapon down, shattering it against the throne room floor. A blinding flash erupted, and Drax's form seemed to unravel, dispersing into motes of light. The changeling guards wavered, their linked minds reeling from the sudden absence of their master. Karos's voice rang out, amplified by the Citadel's communication systems. "The tyrant is fallen. Lay down your arms and embrace a new era of freedom." Throughout the city, throughout the system, Dominion ships began powering down their weapons. The long war was over. Samuel sank to his knees, exhaustion overtaking him. He felt Karos kneel beside him, her strong arms supporting him. "We did it," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Karos nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said softly, "but at what cost?" As the sounds of battle faded, replaced by the cries of the wounded and the cheers of the victorious, Samuel knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. The war was won, but now they faced the monumental task of rebuilding a shattered galaxy. As the dust settled on Gore Veldron, the enormity of the task ahead became clear. Samuel stood atop a crumbling observation deck, surveying the ruined cityscape. Fires still smoldered in the distance, and the acrid smell of burnt plasma lingered in the air. Princess Karos approached, her battle-worn armor caked with grime. "The last pockets of resistance have surrendered," she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "It's over." Samuel nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "The war is won, but now comes the hard part." In the days that followed, the true cost of their victory became apparent. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, worlds reduced to ash, billions dead, entire species teetering on the brink of extinction. The Alliance had triumphed, but at a staggering price. Karos threw herself into the rebuilding efforts, working tirelessly to coordinate relief efforts and establish a new government. Samuel often found her in the makeshift command center, poring over reports and issuing orders long into the night. One evening, as they shared a rare moment of quiet, Karos placed a hand on her swollen belly. "I've decided on a name," she said softly. "Raxor." Samuel raised an eyebrow. A strong name for a new era. Months passed, and the work of reconstruction began in earnest. Human Engineering Corps arrived, setting up prefabricated structures and repairing critical infrastructure. Samuel worked alongside them, his augmented strength proving invaluable in clearing debris and salvaging materials. Not all welcomed the human presence. In the outskirts of the city, Samuel encountered a group of Jem'Hadar warriors, watching the newcomers with suspicion. "We fought for our freedom," one growled, "not to trade one master for another." Samuel held up his hands in a placating gesture. "We're here as allies, not conquerors. This is your world, and we'll leave when our work is done." The warrior's eyes narrowed, but he nodded grudgingly. As the years passed, progress was made, but challenges remained. Samuel found himself constantly mediating between human interests and Jem'Hadar sovereignty. The arrival of Alan Torres, a young and ambitious officer, only complicated matters. "We need to expand our presence," Torres argued during a strategy meeting. "These separatist cells are getting bolder. We need to show strength." Samuel shook his head. "More troops will only inflame tensions. We need to build trust, not fortresses." Torres' teeth gritted, but he said nothing more. The birth of Prince Raxor brought a moment of joy amidst the constant struggle. Samuel watched as the young heir grew into a headstrong adolescent, his mother's commitment evident in every defiant glare. During a public ceremony marking 15 years since the war's end, Raxor took the stage. His voice rang out, clear and passionate. "We honor the sacrifices made to secure our freedom, but we must ask ourselves, are we truly free? Or have we simply exchanged one form of control for another?" Samuel felt a chill run down his spine as he saw the fire in the young prince's eyes. He recognized the look. It was the same persistence he had seen in Karos all those years ago. As Raxor continued his speech, Samuel's comm unit buzzed, a priority message from Earth High Command. He stepped away from the crowd, his heart sinking as he read the report. Changeling terror attacks, human officials assassinated, and worse, evidence linking Raxor to known rebel leaders. Samuel looked back at the stage where Raxor stood proudly beside his mother. The weight of impossible choices pressed down upon him, threatening to crush him beneath their burden. Samuel's grip tightened on the comm unit as he processed the dire implications of the report. He scanned the crowd, his enhanced vision focusing on Raxor's impassioned face. The young prince's words took on a sinister new meaning. "Admiral Bennett, your thoughts?" Torres's voice crackled through the comm, urgent and expectant. Samuel hesitated, his mind racing. "We need more intel. Set up a secure channel with Karos. I'll brief her privately." He made his way through the throng, nodding to the princess as she beamed proudly at her son. The weight of what he had to tell her felt like a physical burden. Hours later, in a fortified war room, Samuel stood before a holographic display of Jem'Hadar space. Red markers indicated insurgent activity, their number growing by the minute. Karos paced, her face a mask of disbelief. "There must be some mistake. Raxor would never—" "The evidence is irrefutable," Samuel cut in, his voice soft but firm. "We need to act now before this escalates further." Torres, his hologram flickering at the edge of the room, interjected. "We should move immediately. Capture the prince, crush this rebellion before it takes root." Karos whirled on him, eyes flashing. "You will not lay a hand on my son." Samuel stepped between them, hands raised. There may be another way. One last chance to determination, this peacefully. Days later, Samuel found himself in an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of the capital. Rusted machinery loomed like silent sentinels as he waited, every sense on high alert. A low rumble announced Raxor's arrival. The prince emerged from an armored transport, flanked by towering Jem'Hadar guards. His eyes narrowed as he spotted Karos. "Mother," he said, voice dripping with disdain, "come to lecture me about duty again?" Karos stepped forward, her expression pained. "My son, please. Whatever grievances you have, we can address them. There's no need for—" "No need?" Raxor's laugh was bitter. "You've allowed these humans to trample our sovereignty, to treat us like conquered subjects rather than allies." Samuel intervened as mother and son closed on each other, fury etched on both faces. "Your Highness, we have no desire to rule your people. Our presence here is temporary, meant only to—" "Enough lies!" Raxor snarled. In a fluid motion, he drew a ceremonial dagger from his belt. The Jem'Hadar guards tensed, hands on their weapons. Samuel's augmented reflexes kicked in. He caught Raxor's wrist before the blade could fall, twisting it away. "We know about your dealings with the changelings," he said quietly. The prince froze, shock replacing anger on his face. Karos gasped, staggering back as if struck. "You don't understand," Raxor began, but the sound of weapons fire cut him off. Chaos erupted. Jem'Hadar and human security forces exchanged plasma bolts, the air thick with ozone and screams. Samuel tackled Karos, shielding her as debris rained down. When the dust settled, Raxor was gone. A gaping hole in the far wall showed where he and his loyalists had blasted their way to freedom. Karos rose shakily, her eyes hard. "Find him," she ordered, her voice carrying the full weight of royal authority. "By any means necessary." In the days that followed, the fragile peace shattered. Cities burned as former allies turned their weapons on each other. Samuel watched grimly as casualty reports flooded in, each death another nail in the coffin of the alliance he'd fought so hard to forge. Torres' hologram flickered to life in Samuel's makeshift command center. "Admiral, we need to escalate our response. Authorize orbital strikes, and we can end this in days." Samuel's fist came down hard on the console. "And undo everything we've worked for? There has to be another way." He stared at the tactical display, mind racing. A plan began to form, desperate and risky, but with a chance of averting total war. "Assemble a strike team," he ordered. "The best we have, human and Jem'Hadar both. We're going after Raxor ourselves." As preparations began, Samuel caught sight of his reflection in a darkened view screen. The lines on his face seemed deeper, the weight of command pulling at his shoulders. He thought of Jack, of Sarah, of all those who'd sacrificed so much to reach this point. "One last mission," he murmured to himself. "One last chance to make it right." Samuel's strike team assembled in the shadows of a gutted skyscraper. Jack Hawkins, his face etched with lines of experience, nodded grimly as he checked his gear. Karos's royal guards, their scaled skin glistening in the dim light, stood at attention. "We move fast, we move quiet," Samuel briefed them. "Raxor's stronghold is just beyond that ridge. Intel suggests heavy fortifications and unexpected enhancements." As they crept through the outskirts of the rebel-held city, the devastation became apparent. Buildings reduced to rubble, streets cratered and scarred. A distant explosion lit up the night sky, followed by the staccato of weapons fire. Jack's enhanced hearing picked up movement. He signaled, and the team froze. A group of rebels emerged from a side alley, their bodies grotesquely altered. Bulging muscles strained against skin, veins pulsing with an unnatural blue glow. "Changeling tech," Karos hissed, her eyes narrowing. The firefight erupted without warning. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as both sides dove for cover. Samuel watched in horror as a rebel, his chest blown open by weapons fire, began to knit itself back together before his eyes. "Fall back," he ordered. "Standard weapons are useless." They retreated, regrouping in the shell of an abandoned factory. Jack's wife, Emily, her face streaked with grime, pulled a small device from her pack. "I've been working on this," she explained, her voice tight. "It should disrupt their regenerative abilities, but the range is limited." Samuel nodded. "It's our best shot. We'll use it to clear a path to the navigation node. If we can take that, we cut off Raxor's command and control." The push into the heart of rebel territory was brutal. Street by street, building by building, they fought their way forward. Emily's device proved effective, but each use drained its power. As they neared the navigation node, a whistling sound pierced the air. Samuel's enhanced reflexes kicked in, but he was too late. "Biobomb!" Jack shouted. The explosion rocked the street. When the dust settled, Samuel saw Emily lying motionless, her body ravaged by the blast. Jack cradled her, his anguished cries echoing off the ruined buildings. Emily's eyes fluttered open, her breathing labored. "Sam," she whispered, "end this, no matter the cost." Her last breath rattled in her chest, and she was gone. Samuel's mind raced, weighing impossible choices. He thought of the bioweapons canisters they'd seized, of the virus that could strip away enhancements from both sides. The risk was enormous, but Emily's words echoed in his ears. "Prepare for chemical deployment," he ordered, his voice hollow. Karos whirled on him. "You can't be serious. The casualties—" "Will be high," Samuel finished, "but it ends this war." He gave the order, watching as the virus spread across the battlefield in a sickly green mist. Human and Jem'Hadar alike fell, writhing as their augmentations were stripped away. The battle devolved into chaos. Unenhanced soldiers grappled in the streets, reduced to primitive combat. Samuel pushed forward, his own strength fading as the virus took hold. They found Raxor cowering in a bunker beneath the navigation node. The once proud prince, now stripped of his enhancements, looked small and afraid. "Please," he begged, "I didn't understand. I was wrong." Karos stepped forward, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and pity. "We must show mercy," she said softly, "for the sake of peace." Before Samuel could respond, a shot rang out. Raxor crumpled to the ground, a smoking hole in his chest. Torres lowered his weapon, his face twisted in a grim smile. "Justice!" he spat. Karos's anguished scream echoed through the bunker. She turned to Samuel, her eyes blazing with fury and grief. "This alliance is over," she snarled. "The Jem'Hadar are done with human interference." As she stormed out, Samuel felt the weight of failure crushing down upon him. The victory, if it could be called that, tasted like ashes in his mouth.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.